Hi everyone. Thank you for being patient. I know I had you locked out there for a few minutes just in the waiting room. We were just trying to make sure that we could leave everyone in as much as we can all at one time. A huge thank you to absolutely everyone who's registered. We had 255 people register for this workshop, with a few stragglers behind, which was absolutely no problem. All is welcome. Men, women, cats, dogs, we're all welcome. But I just wanted to say a huge thanks because this is something that's really obviously important for us at the moment, especially in Athletics Ireland, just trying to improve and highlight the visibility of some of our female role models within the sport. Laura Turner is an embodiment of athletics and how far you can go as an athlete herself, an Olympian, and now as a coach. And thankfully, she is actually, supporting the next generation of athletes through her own coaching within West London Track and Field, but also Team GB through the relays and sprints program. So Laura's actually flying off tomorrow to European Championships in Poland to look after her own athlete, Holly Mills, in the combined event. So we wish her all the luck. She's probably going to have to nip off a little bit earlier just because she will actually have to pack her bags. But look, we won't hold it against her. We won't keep her too long with questions. We'll hopefully plow on. But like I said, 255 people got me questioning, was it because of, Laura and everything that she's done in athletics? Was it because she was a woman in athletics that like 190 women alone signed up for this workshop? And I actually just think it's because she's a damn good coach. And, I think that's something that we'll all aspire to be, men and women, like I said. We're not going to get too far without working in partnership together. So again, thank you so much for recognising that importance and signing up to this workshop. I'm going to stop talking now, but thanks a million to Laura for giving us the time, especially in a high pressure week that she's going to be involved in, that she's going to give us a bit of knowledge and her experiences and everything like that. If anybody has any questions at any stage, just you can either direct them to myself or we'll take some questions at the end of the presentation. So again, like if there's questions that pop up in the meantime, maybe direct them to myself and I can ask Laura throughout. And what else was I going to say is just as well, this is being recorded and so it will be able to be downloaded and will be up on the YouTube channel afterwards. So again, if anyone has to nip off, feed a child or let a dog out or make a cup of tea, there's absolutely no problem. You can always come back and return to it in your own time. So thanks again for tuning in and we hope you enjoy.
Hi everyone, can everyone hear me? Have I unmuted successfully? Yeah, okay, good. So yeah, thank you for inviting me along. Really happy to be able to speak to you all this evening. I'm just going to talk about my journey from athlete into coach and kind of my roles and what I'm doing now as a coach. And then we're going to go into specifics around working with developing athletes, elite athletes, and how I coach and kind of work with the different levels of athletes we have in our group. And then I'm going to speak specifically about women in coaching, which is a topic dear to my heart at the moment, but we'll come on to that later on. So a little bit about my background. I was an athlete. I was a GB sprinter for 10 years. I did start as a very bad multi-eventer when I first started athletics at the age of 10, and then I moved to hurdles and I was pretty bad at that as well. And then discovered I was better at 100 meters, which was quite handy because it was a lot easier. I was with my long-term coach from the age of 16 to the age of 26, Madeline. She brought me from a kind of a club athlete all the way through, as I say, to the Olympics. Really, really solid kind of 10 years of work with her. And when I joined her, I was a very, as I say, very average, just about made English schools, got knocked out of the heat type athlete. And yeah, a lot of work with Madeline and eventually made that Olympic team. My highlights were going to Beijing, running the 100 meters at Beijing, winning the gold in the Commonwealth Games relay in 2010, and fourth place Commonwealth Games 2006 in the 100 meters. And I competed in 4 world champs, 2 Commonwealth Games, and numerous other competitions along the way. So as I was an athlete, I went through university. I studied at Brunel University. I did an undergrad and a postgrad. And at that point, I had aspirations of working in sports science. So still working within sport and elite sport, but more on the kind of support side, working in a lab, dealing with numbers, all that kind of geeky stuff. I still love all that stuff now. It wasn't till towards the end of my career when coaching really became a bit more of a prominent idea for me. One of the coaches I work with, Olympian, he would say to me, "Oh, you'd make a good coach. You make a good coach," and I'd kind of just, yeah, whatever. But then, you know, he stitched me up good and proper towards the end of my career when an athlete asked to join our group, and he didn't think the athlete was quite fit enough to join our group, so he said, "Oh, Laura will help you get fit." And lo and behold, there I was suddenly turned into a coach, and one athlete became 2 athletes, became 3 athletes, and before I knew it, I had a whole group. So I retired from competing in 2014. At that point, I was already coaching a couple of athletes, and it was at that point that Ellie Spain, now Ellie Cormiss herself, the GB pole vaulter, had already set up West London Pole Vault, and she approached me about expanding to West London Track and Field and encompassing the events that I coach, which were sprints and hurdles at the time. So over that summer, we beavered away and we did all our due diligence and got everything ready. So by September 2014 was when West London Track and Field was officially launched, and when I really started my coaching journey. So yeah, West London Track and Field has expanded a lot over the years. My group, as I say, I think my first group, there was about 8 people in there, and it was just me. I went on to bring in strength and conditioning coach. We had interns, we had therapists. I've now got other coaches, we've got other groups, we've got junior sections, we've got all sorts going on. So it has expanded reasonably quickly, but very carefully over the years. And I also now have a role with British Athletics. So initially I was asked to be team coach at an under-23 championships. That was back in 2017. And then off the back of that, I was asked to be involved with the Futures programme, and we developed and are now running a Futures relay programme as well alongside that. And most recently, I've been asked to be team coach at the European Indoor Championships, which will be my first champs on a senior team as a coach. So really looking forward to that. Right, enough about me, that was boring. Okay, so we're going to talk about my training philosophy now. And I say my training philosophy, but we share this kind of vision at West London Track and Field, and all the coaches have their own take on our philosophy. But for me personally, coaching athletics its quality is first and foremost. So we talk about quality of movement, quality of the training session, the organisation, communication, session delivery, etc., etc. So I really do focus on the quality of what we're doing, as opposed to volume, doing things for the sake of it, fluffy things, fancy things, not really interested in all that. I really am quite hot on doing the basic things really, really well. So I like being really boring, but I'm really good at being really boring. We have values at West London Track and Field, and our values are around our logo, which you can see on the top left of the slide there. Precision, perseverance, excellence, dedication, respect. Now, these are all well and good written on a logo, but are they actually being lived day to day? Well, we try and bring them alive for the athletes, and this really is we are rooted in our values at West London Track and Field. So how do we go about that? Well, we do regular athlete reviews, whether that's one-to-one or group reviews once a year. And within those reviews, we ask the athletes to reflect on how they've displayed our values, or we'll do a group activity and we say, who in our group has displayed a value, and give an example. And actually I think that was one of my favourite exercises. We had a kind of a pre-season group session. And I had them all they were all in groups of about 6 on tables around the room. And I wanted them to come up with examples of when an athlete in our group has displayed one of our values. And we went on after, once everyone had thought about it, they wrote it down, they shared it with the group. And it was really nice to see athletes recognising other athletes for values such as working hard after an operation, diligently doing their warm-up routine, always being enthusiastic, and all these things that people were highlighting, you know, they are behaviours, they are rooted in our values. They weren't admiring athletes because they performed really well, they're admiring their peers because of the values that they displayed. So yeah, again, behaviours. So we try, and it's more than just the words written around the logo. We try and encourage and we try and highlight as much as possible the athletes and coaches and all the staff displaying our values. And being a role model, I think, for me as a coach, this is something that's, I think, becoming more prominent and more obvious to me as I go through my coaching journey. When I reflect back on how I viewed and how I worked with my coaches as an athlete, the athletes can hang on every word you say sometimes, and that's not me kind of inflating my ego, but if I think back to my relationship with my coaches, you know, a small bit of praise or a small comment here or there really could make my day or make the session or be a big turning point for me. So I really make sure that the coaches that work with us understand what kind of an impact that we're having on these guys. And the impact is, yes, it's on their athletics and it's on their performance, but it's also on them as humans. And not everyone in our group is a GB athletes. We have a couple, but the majority aren't. So we're working with these athletes to develop them as people. So, you know, they kind of thrive and do well in the big wide world when they get to that point. Most of our athletes are kind of university age. So we're at that pivotal point when they're moving into the real world, so to speak. So my transition into coaching, and I was asked what my learnings were from moving from an athlete into being a coach. And this is a question that people ask me quite a lot, you know, do you miss being an athlete? Absolutely not. I do not miss being an athlete because I'm still doing something that I love. And I'm able to be involved in a sport that I love in another way. And it's brilliant because I haven't got to do all the horrible training. So I think the main thing when I look back on my time as an athlete is that I will say to athletes that I coach now, and it's something that I use as a coach as well, I kind of give myself the advice and other coaches, is that enjoy it while you're in it and don't take things for granted. I think it's really easy as an athlete to go from year to year to year and just being focused on those targets. So I want to go to this champs and then we'll go to that champs. And as an athlete, it was world champs, Olympics, world champs, Europeans. There was always something to aim for. And when you're in it, you really don't appreciate it at the time. I think when I went to the Olympics, I didn't really realise how big a deal that was. And the further away that memory is, the more I realised how great that was, that I went to the Olympic Games and I can call myself an Olympian. So yeah, I think for me, it's just not to take things for granted, enjoy things as you go along and just be present in that moment and enjoy that moment. When I moved into coaching, I'd only been with two coaches through my career. So Madeline and Linford were my two coaches. So I had a relatively small experience of training, and that's fine because it was my experience, but I wanted to expand that knowledge and expand that experience. So I spoke to loads of people because I wanted to understand different methods of training, different ways of doing things, and just create a bit more of a network. So that's another kind of piece of advice I would give to anyone, athletes or not, who get into coaching, is really try and broaden your horizons and get as much experience or hear from as many people as you possibly can. I do speak to a lot of people. I've listed some of them down there. That's not an exhaustive list. There's loads more people than that that I speak to on a regular basis, but there's just a few people there. And I speak to different people for different reasons. So there'll be people in there that I speak to for technical reasons. I always give the example of Benki here, because if I've got a hurdle or sprint specific question, I will go to Benki first normally. And he is like a walking library. He's got a document or a video for everything. So he's a really good source of that kind of information for me. I will speak to Frank, for example. I can see him on the list there. Frank's a long jump coach that works with all our multi-eventers. a wealth of knowledge, years of experience, world medalists, Olympic medalists, crazy, absolutely crazy CV Frank has. But alongside the long jump knowledge that Frank has, I'll pick Frank's brain about things like coach-athlete relationship, how to handle athletes at a championships, how to handle two athletes in your group that are competing for the same spot. So, there's different people that I speak to for different reasons. And I think as a coach, it's nice to have coaching friends that you can just chat to, because coaching can be really lonely. And sometimes you feel like, I was going to swear then, but I didn't swear. You can feel like a really bad coach. You have days where someone gets injured or someone doesn't perform well or whatever it is. And you just think, oh my God, I'm really rubbish today. And I think everyone has that. But until you have, friends and peers that are in coaching as well, you can feel really isolated. So I would definitely advise people kind of having that network to ask for technical help or relationship building, or even just to chat and just to kind of compare stories so that you don't feel so isolated, because as I say, it can be quite lonely. I talk quite a lot about our Brunel bubble, and we're quite lucky at West London because there's quite a few of us, so we can all bounce off each other and talk to each other, but there's not many people there. It's kind of just us and Linford and a couple of other coaches, so it is kind of good to get out there and chat to more people. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about working with developing athletes compared to working with elite athletes. So I'm sure, I don't know if you guys are aware of our system at the moment where we have elite athlete status. Now I laugh at this because a couple of athletes that I coach, I joke, I'm saying, oh, you're not elite. They compete for Great Britain. One's just made a senior team for Great Britain, but I don't know what I'd class elite. I don't know how good they'd have to be for me to class them elite. But anyway, we'll call them developing and we'll call them elite. But when I say elite, I mean kind of making GB teams and making under 23 senior teams. So the first thing I'm going to address is just around working with developing athletes. Now, this is where I've had my most experience as a coach, and it's working with that kind of 18 to 25-year-old bracket. That's why I've got most of my athletes in that age group. And the first thing is that they don't know what they don't know. So they're coming to you normally 16, 17, 18 years old, and they may not have been in a similar system, a similar coach that teaches the same systems and the same kind of principles that we teach. So we have to teach them things from scratch. So not taking that for granted. And, I have handouts and pictures and all these kind of things, because you'll be surprised. They might think they know, but they don't necessarily know, or they don't know the way that we want it to be done. I've put here feel ? So we talk about feel, or they have to feel this, they have to feel that, they have to feel how fast things are. But as I say, you don't know what you don't know. So with developing athletes, it's very difficult to talk about feel because they don't know what they're feeling because they haven't felt it yet. So a lot of times you can say, oh, how was that? And they'll say, oh, that was rubbish. And actually it was really good. So I think trying to put into context with them different feelings as they develop and as they grow is probably one of the most important things that we can do. And you might do that by using video and obviously feedback with the athlete. But yeah, putting into context what they're feeling, because I call it fake news. So just because something's different, it doesn't mean that it was bad. And you get that a lot with developing athletes because things are changing quite quickly for them in terms of their training and them as people. They're kind of growing and going through growth spurts, etc. So yeah, put into context what they're feeling. I've also put here volume. So when I started coaching, I was very much, I've always said about the quality aspect. I was very much, right, let's strip all that volume out. We'll just do loads of technical stuff and it'll be great. They'll all run really well. Well, what actually happened was I had a load of athletes that looked really pretty when they ran, but they weren't very fast. So I think it's about prioritizing technique, but we have to retain an element of volume. And that's not to say you slog them until they're throwing up and, collapse on the floor. That is never a goal of a session. But I would always, with the younger guys, don't feel scared to leave that volume in there, but always have the technical element of the session first. and then try and keep that through as much a session as possible. And then I put compromise as well. I think with the developing guys, we are dealing with a lot of different things. So we're dealing with school, with university, with work, with boyfriends or girlfriends or parents putting restraints on them. So I think compromise is a big thing for the developing guys, and understanding, you know, why they're there, what they're getting out of it, and that will be different for the older and the more elite athletes. But I've certainly learned to compromise more with the developing athletes and be a bit more flexible. As I said, a lot of the athletes we work with are students, or they work full-time. We've only got a couple of athletes that have afforded the luxury of being full-time or semi-full-time athletes. So we do have to make certain compromises, and we do have certain ways in working with those guys. There is at least one session a week where it's what we call our tempo session. So it's a more volume-based session. It's more of an active recovery type session. It's not particularly technical as such. So for those sessions, if an athlete is having to travel for more than an hour, we would say, okay, don't worry, do that session back home near where you live. So that's probably more relevant for the people that are working full time. We've got a couple of athletes that travel from South London or from Central London. You know, they finish at 9 to 5 and then they've got an hour's commute to get over to Brunel. Well, it's probably better for them if they just trained nearer home and got it done nearer them and didn't sit in the car for a couple of hours. So we do make allowances for travel with certain athletes who we know have got a long commute and are working full time. There's another session we do, which is a kind of a regeneration session, which is almost like a nice to have session as opposed to a must have session. So again, we put it in there, but there's no pressure if university work's taken over or they have a terrible day at work, then they can skip that one if they want to, because, you know, life happens. So we kind of let them work out their priorities by trial and error. And we will always explain our expectations and what we expect from them. And we want to understand what their expectations are of us. And we make them accountable for their choices. So if they're going to consistently choose a Friday night out over a Saturday morning quality training session, that's probably a conversation to have about expectations and how we manage that. We do, well, before COVID came along, we did used to take a register. I mean, that sounds so official, doesn't it? It wasn't a register. We would take note of people that were missing sessions. So we know for an athlete to improve, they have to have completed 80% of the training. What I found after a couple of years was that we would have a few athletes that would kind of regularly miss a session, one session every week, every couple of weeks. And that accumulates over time. So, you know, we want this magical 80% number. So we were tracking until COVID came, we were tracking where people were in terms of how much the training they'd completed. So when it came to review time or season time and they weren't hitting their targets or they weren't where they wanted to be, that was one thing that we could look at to say, okay, have you been training consistently? Have you been training 80% of the time? As one of the other things that we'd address, but that is something. We have got a degree of flexibility, but we know that there has to be a cut-off level in terms of their kind of completion of training. So I've also been asked to talk a little bit about a junior to senior transition. And so I do work on the Futures programme, and the whole goal of that programme is to bring the athlete coach pairs through to the world class plan. And I say athlete and coach pairs because we do recruit athlete coach pairs and we do work with the athletes and the coaches. It is definitely a journey for both of them. I think the first thing to be said with this whole junior to senior thing is that it is a funnel and there's not room for everyone at the top. So if you think every year we've got one or two good juniors in each event, you know, when you get to a senior, there's only 3 spaces on the team. So not every junior that makes a junior team is going to make a senior team. There's just not enough space for everybody. So it's not a given that if you're a good junior or you make a junior team, you're going to make a senior team. There is definitely a funnel and there's bottlenecks when you get to a senior. I think your senior cess is set up from your junior year. junior years, and where the priorities are during those years. So I would say that if as a junior you're focusing on times, medals and championships, you are setting them up to fail. I would say the priorities for a junior athlete should be on learning the event and what is required of that event, building your capacity to train, and understanding where their physical capabilities are. So what are the gaps? You know, as I said, learning the event, what is required? Okay, what is required? What are you able to do? What's the gap in the middle? Where are we getting this development from, and how long might that take us to get there? Also developing a relationship with your coach, so you both understand how best to work together. And I say together because it's not just a one-way thing, it's definitely a relationship. And I think if you can build a really good relationship in the junior years, I think an athlete can move through with seniors regardless of what they've done previously. I think if you can become an expert in that athlete, you can certainly take an athlete almost all the way, I would argue, because you become an expert in the athlete. You don't have to be an expert in the event necessarily. And I think the last thing is let them fail. You know, I think the worst thing that can happen for a junior is that they win everything or they achieve everything they want to achieve. I think it's not going to help them as an older athlete. I think there's quite a lot of research out there, and I haven't got any to pull up here, but there's quite a lot of research out there with, if you look at a lot of senior athletes, and this goes across sports, so you can talk about rugby, football, athletics, all different sports. It's a rocky road, they call it, and your progression goes like this. If you see someone's progression quite linear from an early age, that's almost alarm bells, even though it's great. And unless you've got a unicorn, like a Usain Bolt on your hands, a linear progression isn't always what we're looking for. We do want some bumps in the road. We do want to build some resilience. We do want to build athletes that know how to negotiate failure and deal with failure and get through that. That does make for better senior athletes. And then managing different levels of athletes. Okay, so we go back to this developing versus elite. Again, elite, I don't know what elite, what you call elite, but we've defined elite for the purpose of today. So we do have to treat athletes slightly differently when their performance level improves. And those changes can manifest in the way you set up your training week. So can they handle more training maybe than they could before? Is their training age now 5 or 6 years as opposed to 1 or 2 years? Different levels of conversations. Now, you know, you have if I've got an athlete who's just made a senior team, the conversations I can have with that athlete are going to be very different to the athlete who's just started athletics 2 years ago. So, you know, pitching the conversations correctly depending on what kind of athlete you're working with. Expectations, again, so I wouldn't expect an athlete who is aiming to get to an under 23s or an under 20s to be going out drinking on a Friday night and come training on a Saturday. But maybe if it's just an athlete who is at university, has specific goals for athletics, but they haven't got specific, you know, big aspirations, maybe that's okay. But as long as you kind of are clear of those expectations from the outset, I think that's important. Again, the goals I've just said can be very, very different, and they may be developing athletes. We're talking more about, okay, I want to really be able to hit my figure 4 position in my upright running, for example. Whereas a more elite athlete may say, I want to be able to run 2.82 for a flying 30, a little bit more specific, a little bit more outcome focused. Again, going back to the compromise, so I'd expect more compromise from a developing athlete over an elite athlete. I'd expect an elite athlete to prioritise athletics, and I'd expect a developing athlete to have other priorities in their life that may be in that mixing pot. And I think also, you know, despite, you know, we've got a lot of different levels of athletes within our squads at West London, but I think the beauty of why it's working is appreciating that everyone can help everyone. And, you know, having, as I said, we went around the room and I asked the people to give examples of people displaying values, and those people weren't the high performers. They're the ones that come in and work really hard, or have a really good attitude, or know how to overcome setbacks. So I think just appreciating that you haven't all got to be on the same level, that everyone of any level can help everyone else. Whew. Take a sip of water. Okay, so I'm going to try and put that into life for you. I'm going to use Holly as an example. So Holly is, she just made her first senior team in the pentathlon. She's off to European indoors. So she would be our elite. I'm going like this elite, and I've said this to her as well, elite, whatever. She have to win a few medals first before I can call her elite. And then we've got the rest of the multi-events group who operate at a different level to Holly currently. So we're having to kind of differentiate the way that they train slightly. So I've put up here an example of their weekly setup. So without, you can read what that says on there. But to summarise, Holly will, she'll do 1.5 times the event per week. So for example, we will do a full-on hurdle session once a week, and another time in the week, we'll do a hurdle skills warm-up session. We'll do one full-on shot session in the week, and then we'll do another session where we do some shot put drills and med ball drills and things. So 1.5 times the event per week. The rest of the group, because of the density that requires within the week and the time that requires, the rest of the group will just do once a week. So they will do one hurdle session, one shot session, etc., etc. And this goes back to that compromise. So Holly will not compromise her time for athletics. So she prioritises her athletics over almost everything else. She's a third year student, so we are negotiating that currently as well. But she's done a great job managing her time with that. So, the compromise for her comes that she has no social life, which we hope comes back very soon once university finishes and Corona's over and everything else. The conversations we have are very different now. So the words I can now use with an athlete like Holly would be words like delivering. So delivering a performance and professional. So she is actually technically a professional athlete. She has a contract with a company. So, we can talk about being professional and what that looks like and how you go about delivering, world-class performances, which she did start to do in the last competition that she did. She is learning to deliver those performances when it matters. Now, the real test will be on Friday, but, those are the conversations we can have. I wouldn't dream of talking about those kind of things with athletes that are not operating at that kind of level, Expectations. So again, I've already alluded to it, but the expectation that Holly is prepared to adjust her lifestyle to accommodate herself being a full-time athlete. The majority of her time is put towards being a full-time athlete, and she's prepared to spend money on investing in her athletics and her career. I wouldn't necessarily have the same expectations again for an athlete who's working 9 to 5. I wouldn't expect them, again, they haven't got the time. They may want to have a bit more of a social life and go out a little bit more. They may not want to spend all their money on physio or coaching or traveling to these competitions. So just different expectations based on what the athlete's goals are. And I put here goals process versus outcome. Now, that's not to say that an elite athlete's goals are purely outcome based. That's definitely not the case. But with the more elite guys, we know a little bit more about their competition, and we know a little bit more about what they're capable of. And you can kind of predict what's going to be needed for them to achieve certain targets. Whereas with the developing athletes, it's a lot more unknown. So all the goals are more internal and process focused. That being said, when Holly goes to compete on Friday, she is completely process orientated, completely process focused. Even though she's at a major championships, she knows that she has to focus on the process while she's there. And then again, what I said, the group, same but different. So we have a fantastic group. We have a really, really nice balance of different personalities. And I think it's appreciating that everyone can help everyone else. And it's not just, I need to run with faster people to make me run faster. It's actually that type of personality really helps me relax and stay relaxed during training and competition. And that kind of personality really makes sure that I get my warm-up done properly. And this kind of personality really helps me unwind after training, just just appreciating everyone for being different and appreciating that everybody can help everybody. Well, I'm banging through here. I'm going to keep going and we'll do questions at the end if that's all right. I don't know if anyone's had questions, but I'm going to talk a bit more about women in coaching now. So I've recently been put on a programme called Female Coach Leadership Programme. It's with UK Sport, and it's identifying the fact that there's a very, 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 very small percentage of female coaches who are accredited with accreditation to be team coaches at Olympic Games. And this spans across all sports. But there is, I think this stat, we think this stat's right. So as of now, I am the first female team coach on a GB senior track and field team when I go to Europeans tomorrow, which is shocking. So in all the years of all the Olympics, the World Champs, the World Indoors, European Championships, there's never been a female team coach. So a team coach is someone that travels as part of the team. A personal coach might be a personal coach for an athlete that's made the team, but as someone who's there representing British athletics, there's never been a female. So this programme has been brought in by UK Sport to address that, and their goal is to have more female coaches working for their governing bodies when it comes to Paris 2024. So as part of that course, we're obviously learning about it's mainly about leadership. It's not just talking about females within leadership, but it's talking about just generally the premise of being a leader within sport and a leader coach. I'm also involved with the Female Coaching Network, who have recently published a pretty damning report on female coaching in the UK. If you go to the Female Coaching Network website, I'm sure you can read all about that there. So, women in coaching. I think the first thing to acknowledge is that there are barriers for females in coaching, and I hate talking about them and how terrible it is for females, and oh my god, woe is me, that I'm not here to do that, but we certainly have to address the fact that there are barriers for women, just so that everyone's going into this with their eyes open. And I think as a female in coaching, it's important that I understand what the potential barriers are. So we have stereotypes. There's three main types of stereotypes. The first one is I call the Goldilocks. So too soft, too tough, never just right. So if a female acts typical to her gender, they'll be called too soft. Or if a female acts atypical to her gender stereotype, she'll be called too tough. And there's never really that balance. I'm sure there's many examples you can think of. I'm thinking of Matilda and Miss Trunchbull, for example, you know, always too tough. Anyway, so that's the first kind of stereotype. The second stereotype we deal with is called high competence threshold. And there's research that shows that women are subjected to higher competency standards than men. So we're expected to do a better standard of work compared to our male counterparts in the same role. And then the third type is competent but disliked. So you're rarely competent and liked as a female. Again, we can go back to examples. Oh, she's a really good boss, but she's a bit of a bitch, or, you know, comments like that are quite common. And I think women who display leadership qualities and certain qualities, managing a team or being a leader, they get labelled with certain things. And if a male is to display the same quality, they wouldn't get given the same label. So we certainly are dealing with a little bit of difference with how women are getting labelled based on their kind of leadership behaviour. So how do we overcome our barriers? The first way is to talk openly, ask questions, challenge people. Why am I the only female coach to be on a British team? I actually asked my bosses at British Athletics, I said, why are there no female performance coaches at British Athletics? And his first thing was, well, aren't there? I said, no, there aren't. And there still aren't. There's a couple of us now on the Futures programme, but there's no female performance coaches employed by British Athletics. So ask the questions, challenge them, make people think why, make people feel uncomfortable why there aren't any on there. You know, definitely start asking the questions. you can show them otherwise. You can be the good example, you can be visible, you can be confident, you can speak up. And that's certainly something that I have taken on board this year. I think for me personally, in the position I'm in, I'm trying to do a better job of speaking up for women and being a good advocate for females in coaching. But that certainly should be the case for more females out there. We should certainly be more confident, be more bold. We can also be clear and effective with our communication. So letting people know what we want to do and going and doing it. I think generally women aren't very good at being the first to speak up. We almost wait for things to come to us. So it's important that as women, it's important I tell people at British Athletics, actually, I would like to be a performance coach, which I don't know if it would happen, but it's nice for them to know that. And then minimising the issue, moving away from the gender discussion, not having these, as I said, identifying the barriers, but let's not dwell on it. Let's not get sad and have a little cry, the fact there's no women in coaching. Let's just do something about it. Let's move away from gender discussion and let's just talk about good coaching. Which brings me on to my next point, characters of great coaches or leaders. So again, this comes from some research, and there's quite a lot of things here which I'll go through, but I think the important thing is to note that everyone's different and everyone's going to be good at different things as a coach. And I think as females especially, we do bring a different side into coaching, and I'm not disregarding my male counterparts here, but there's definitely different skill sets and different behaviours that men and women bring to coaching. So characteristics of great coaches and leaders: they are empowering, stimulating, energising, rewarding, and they give feedback. So I've classed those together because I often just call that shoving a rocket up their bum. Being that person that kind of gets everyone going, gets the troops kind of moving and motivated, as I say, shoving a rocket up the bum sometimes. They are team building, they are good communicator because they are clear and unambiguous in their communication, and they are good at building relationships. So again, it's about not so much managing, because managing is more about day to day, but really having that sense of team and really leading a team, and being very, very clear about what the team expectations are, and building good relationships with members of your team as well. They are a cultural architect, so you instill good values and goals. So that comes back with West London, with our values there. For me to be a cultural architect within West London track and field, it's important that I do instill these values and we do display these behaviours as staff and as athletes, because our athletes are advocates for our programme as well. And also the last couple, courageous and visionary. So as I said, be bold, speak up, tell people what you want to do. What's your vision? What are your goals? Tell people, go and tell your boss, or go and tell your peers, or whoever it is, but be courageous and be bold. And the last thing is creating a network, or I called it sponsors, but it sounds that's quite an American term, I think, sponsors, but I would say creating a network. And it's funny because we had a session on this morning in my female leadership program, and we'll talk about our network of people. But I think it's really important, sorry, I almost made it through that coffee. Yeah, I think your network is very, very important. I think knowing the people that support you is very, very important, and knowing people that will have your back. And those are the people that you want to share your ideas with. You want people that will go into a meeting and speak up for you, and kind of be your advocate. And like I said about networks before, just having those people that you can lean on, that you trust, I think is very, very important. And go big with your network. I realised after our session today that my network is, my network's more my day-to-day. And in order for me to progress in my career, I'm going to have to cast that net a little bit wider, be brave, have some uncomfortable conversations, go and introduce myself to people. But yeah, I think just getting to know people and kind of casting your net wide. So that's kind of my last bit about women in coaching, and that's everything. I don't know how long I've spoken for. Only 20 minutes. My God, I'm sorry, that's really short. But I hope that's enough time for questions.
Laura, I am actually, first of all,
Oh,
thank
nice.
you so much. There was so much there that I hope people will be able to take it from it. Some lots of practical good examples, and I actually think can relate to a lot of the setups that we have here within our own clubs. You kind of, a few questions that have came up either before the presentation or actually just there through the chat box, but your own journey from going obviously from a sprinter or combined to sprints and everything like that obviously had a big effect on your coaching, but how much of a learning curve has it been coaching the multi-events? Do you find it difficult to manage all the and balance all the events, and do you have to make compromises on some of those events?
Okay.
Lots there, sorry.
I miss someone speaker. Multi-events is terrible. It's worse than 400 hurdles, and they're bad enough. Yeah, have I managed that? So I've managed that by getting in other event coaches to coach events that I don't know much about. So I do lead the multi-events team, and I have a throws coach who does the shot and jab. I've got Frank who does the long jump, and Rafa who is just a combined events genius and just helps me out with a lot of stuff. So I do have other people that I lean on. I don't profess to know everything about multi-events. I certainly don't. But what I think I do is I provide a really balanced training program. I make sure the week is balanced and they're not doing too much at certain days. I make sure that they're physically ready for the challenge of combined events. And I think I'm pretty proud of the conditioning of the athletes that we work with. And I'm also, like, this is really corny, but I say I'm not a combined events expert, but I am an expert in Holly Mills, for example. I know Holly Mills really, really well, and I know what makes her tick. I know how she's going to react to certain situations. I know how to kind of work with her. So you haven't necessarily got to be an expert in the event as such, but I think knowing the athletes really well, and that's for all the athletes, I feel like I know them really well and I know what makes them tick. So I bring in event group people to help me with the technical side of things, and then I'm kind of more of the manager and the leader within the team.
Yeah.
What was the other question about compromise?
It was just whether do you have to make compromises on certain events depending on maybe the athlete's development or their skill level. Do you have to sacrifice one event for another, or how do you juggle it all?
So at the start of the year, we'll identify events that, and this is an Aston Moore phrase, he says, you put certain events into a holding pattern. So they're over here, they're just holding. So there's certain events that the athletes are really good at that we know are just, they're okay, and they'll tick along and they'll improve slowly. And then there's certain events where we really need to practice. So for Holly, it's javelin. I don't know if people know Holly very well, but she's only done 2 heptathlons in her life, bless her, but javelin was a real focus for us this year. And shot, and I don't know if you've seen, but she's put on a few meets to her shot PB already, so I'm looking forward to the javelin. But yeah, what I would say is they do every event once a week. But how much of that and how much ancillary stuff you do depends on if the event is in their holding pattern or if the event is the event we know we need to push on that year.
Yeah, brilliant. Another question, you kind of talked about like managing expectations and the dynamics of the various athletes that are within your group. Like a lot of the coaches here would be lucky to have lots of athletes like Holly, because of their attitude, not because of their level of ability or anything like that. But how do you manage, or do you actually have to deal with athletes who don't stick to the expectations either set by you and themselves, or they might have a poor attitude, or they're turning up late? Is that something that you have to deal with, or?
Yes. So yeah, I coach at the university, so I do get a lot of university students coming in. I think I'm in a lucky position where, I'm not going to say lucky position, no, because again, this is what we do, females. We make everything luck. No, it's not luck. We've worked hard to get to this point. I'm in the position where athletes, only a certain type of athlete will ask me to coach them because they know that I'm, for want of a better word, I'm quite strict. So I don't get lazy athletes. I don't get athletes that turn up late. I don't get athletes that can't be bothered. They don't ask me to coach them because they know that I don't suffer fools. And I've had to kick a few people out in the past of my group if they've not met expectations or they've not behaved in line with our values, or just, yeah, not being good team members. And that's not been many. But like I say, I think only certain type of athletes join our group because they know what our group's about. So I'm fortunate that we've created that culture. But certainly, yeah, lateness, the rule with lateness in my group is if you're going to be more than 5 minutes late, send us a text. If you're more than 5 minutes late with no text, you're not getting coached that day. So I had an athlete drove 2.5 hours. She was late by an hour, didn't text me, so I didn't coach her. She'd driven 2.5 hours. She was upset, but, you know, send me a text. It's not hard. So there you go.
Yeah, no, 100%. Completely appreciate your honesty too, because I think, like you said, you have to set standards within your own coaching group. Otherwise, I know it's an athlete-centered world, but the athlete isn't going to get too far if they don't have their coach in the right mindset for them as well. 100%. Another question, Laura, that was posed was at various stages, either kind of that youth level, so maybe between 16 to 18 or even older, they might make a big jump, no pun intended in the long jump or anything like that, but they might make a big jump in performance and then all of a sudden nearly plateau for a little while around or get stuck in that region or area. Have you experienced something like this, and if so, how would you overcome that?
Yeah, I have plenty of athletes plateauing and or not progressing, and I think it's really important that you cover all your bases. In that, it depends how frustrated the athlete's getting. To be honest, I would get frustrated as a coach, and hopefully the athlete is also frustrated. So I think it's important you look at everything. So obviously the training plan and how, you know, are there injuries? Are we doing too much? Doing too little? Have you completed 80% of training? Can you honestly say you completed 80% of the training? How are you approaching competition? I had an athlete that had an absolutely shocking year because all they're focused on was this one distance. They wanted to jump this one distance, and I think for example, it was a long jump and it was 6:20, and they were completely fixated on this 6:20 all year. And they jumped 13, 6:15, 6:12. You know, they jumped every distance under the sun, but not 6:20. And the reflection from that was actually I got so obsessed with this outcome that I forgot how I was doing it and the process and how I was getting there. So that's another thing to look at. You know, how they're going about, how they're approaching their competition and their training. I look at depending on the age of the athlete, I'll look at things like body composition. I'll look at sleep. I'd look at females if their periods have stopped. I'd look at lifestyle and work. I'd speak to the parents. You know, you really need to, you see these guys for 2 hours, 3 or 4 times a week. So there's so much more in their lives that could be throwing up stuff there. And I think a lot of the time coaches take all the blame themselves, but you do have to throw it back to the athlete sometimes and say, have you done everything you think you can in order to meet your objective, in order to meet your goals? Because I think as a coach would go, oh, it must be me, I've written a terrible training program, I'm such an awful coach. And that might be the case, and sometimes that is the case, but yeah, don't be scared to kind of throw it back on the athlete and just ask them if they think they're doing everything they can.
100%. Laura, I'm going to embarrass you first, because just a few messages have just came in just to say thank you for your honesty and your insights, because they found it very inspiring was the word, and just your attitude and approach to coaching is something that they've all really, well, a lot of people here have admired, and they want to just say thanks for, you know, the tips and bits and pieces that you've shared along the way. So just thank you. A few questions, Laura, is some of the coaches, we have a similar setup here over in Ireland in the sense of the lower level coaching positions are kind of dominated by the women, you know, those who've done athletic leader, assistant coach level 1, but those progressing to the higher level coaching courses in level 2, level 3, they're not populated by women, unfortunately not. We know a lot of reasons why, Would you have any advice on encouraging them maybe to kind of step up or do get involved in one of those courses?
Yeah, for sure. I think if that's what you want to do, if they're your aspirations, like I said, you have to be bold and you have to just go for it. I think as a gender, look at me, I'm serious, this is terrible, isn't it? We tend to not put ourselves forward for things or think that other people are better than us. And I think it's probably about time that we started backing ourselves a little bit more. And yeah, just having confidence. It's something you may gather, I've never really struggled with confidence being a sprinter, but I think that could be why I've progressed reasonably well, is that I came from a background where it was pretty hardcore being an international sprinter, and that kind of personality has suited itself to kind of forcing my way through this coaching journey and being really tenacious with it. So unfortunately, that's the world we live in, and that is sport. But I think the biggest thing would be, just back yourself and go for it, and start creating a network and talking to more people, and you will find advocates and people that can help you and give you a bit of a step up.
Brilliant. Another few questions, Laura. They're coming in now nice and fast. In terms of the combined events and the multi events, you showed us the kind of weekly plan maybe there of Holly. How long does a typical session last? I know this, it's like how long is a piece of string, but does it depend on the event, or do you have set times that a session will last for, durations, or?
Yeah, I have to. If it was up to Holly, she would train 24 hours a day. And that's not good for anyone. So what Holly a lot of the time she'll do at least 2, sometimes 3. She'll do 2 sessions, so we'll split it, so she'll go and have lunch and then come back. And with the technical sessions, so for example with a jav session at the weekend, she had 45 minutes and that was it. You got to put a time limit on these things, because the other thing to remember with the technical event coaches is, and it's the same thing with the S&C coach or whoever it is, they all rightly so think that their part is the most important part, and it's your job as the lead coach or the leader or whatever you are in that situation to rein it all in and put it all into perspective. So the throws coach comes in and there's a running joke that throws are the best thing in the whole world and he loves throws and let's just throw all day, and I'm saying no, you've got 45 minutes, and they'll have their 45 minutes and then that's it. But that's certainly the job that's why you need someone coordinating the whole thing. Because I say, if you left it to the athletes, we'll just do one more, no, that's it, we're done, 40 minutes is over. A typical session lasts like a Monday could be 3 hours, and then a gym in the evening. That's quite a technical day. But then like a Tuesday and a Thursday, she can probably bang that out in 90 minutes. That's quite like a recovery type session. So there's a lot. And again, she will do more hours than the other guys do. So
And the lovely phrase that coaches hate, but it depends, probably kind of springs to mind there. Yeah. Laura, another question just for coaches who are maybe kind of starting off their coaching journey. You said that you inherit athletes technically from in a university setup, which is like very often the case here in Ireland as well. When you're looking at athletes, what are the key attributes that you're looking for observing when they first come in? Is it the way they move? Is it, their spring and their step? Is it is it the distance, the time? Are there any specific drills or KPIs that you look for?
So my first impression, and whether or not I take an athlete on or not, is actually not anything to do with the physical. If it's a student, for example, and I know the students are going to come in September, it's the students that contact me in the May or the June, or even I've already had one I spoke to in January. It's those students that I want to work with. It's the ones that look forward, look in advance, and make their plans, and they know they want to come and train with me. Those are the athletes that I want to work with. The athletes that rock up in September and wander through the door and say, "Oh, can I come and train with you?" Absolutely not. No. I want to work with the athletes that have thought about what they want to do. They've spoken to me in advance. They've asked me questions about the training, almost interviewed me. I love the athletes that come and ask me about my training. I love that. So there's that first and foremost. That's kind of their first interview to get into the group. And then in terms of physical, yeah, it's hard, isn't it? It depends on the event. I think if it's a sprinter, I'm looking for a certain quality off the floor, which is sometimes difficult to coach. So that kind of reactivity is quite nice to see. Or if they're able to produce a lot of force on the floor, that's kind of the other end of the spectrum. With the multi-venters, I'm looking for coordination and how well they move. I think it's and you know, Holly's not great at that. Jodie's much better at that, actually. Jodie is a beautiful high jumper. So when I say about, you know, everyone can help everyone, Holly's high jump is not pretty, but Jodie's high jump is absolutely beautiful. So when we're doing a high jump session, you know, Holly's asking Jodie, how do you do that? What are you thinking about? You know, so it's really nice that they can all kind of help each other. So yeah, it's that quality and coordination movement with the multi-venters. And then it is just that little bit of grit. So when we kind of get into the sessions and it starts hurting, I want to see who digs in and who doesn't, and who's able to push themselves. But yeah, it's kind of natural selection, isn't it? These people just work their way out, or they don't make it to Christmas, some of them.
Tough taskmaster. Another question, Laura, just in relation, people are wishing you a safe flight also up to Poland. Another question that just came in there is, what is your strategy going into the weekend as team manager and working with athletes you know or you don't know or you've never worked with? Have you decided on any approaches to that?
That's something I've had thought about, actually, because when I go on a junior team, I normally know all the athletes because we've had our relay program going the whole year, or even 2 years with the juniors. So I normally know the juniors pretty well. But going into the senior champs, I know most of them, but not all of them, and I certainly don't know how they are in competition. So it's actually something that I've asked Benki about, because Benki's also sprints coach as well. Mm-hmm. And it is almost like a suck and see. You just have to just get there and get to know them. And I think as a coach, you can gauge people, and you should be able to read, you know, you should be able to read people's body language, and you should see if someone's getting really nervous and jittery, and you know, you could go and maybe just put an arm and calm them down, or you can tell the people that just want to take themselves away and not talk to anybody and just get on with them themselves. So I think it is something that I've thought about, and I have asked people about it, but I think it's just going to be, right, Laura, in you go, work it out to begin with, unfortunately.
That's okay. No doubt you'll take it in your stride anyway. Like you said, you've been there before as an athlete, so no doubt you'll be more than capable of doing it now as a team manager. Laura, another bit of praise. Geez, you'll have to come over to Ireland. You'll have to meet all these men and women. Don't worry, Laura, I have it all planned out. Post-COVID, you're going to be the key speaker. Whether you want to come or not, we're going to make sure you get over here. But great presentation. Great to see a successful female coach, and shocking to hear that you're the first female team coach. With your athletes, do you educate females on the impact of periods, the menstrual cycle on training and racing? And do you encourage good pelvic floor health, especially with combined eventers? No doubt you're doing a lot with the jumping and high intensity activities. So is this something that you've had to deal with?
Yeah, the period debate is, and I don't know, I mean, I used to tell Linford about my periods. I don't care, you know, I'll tell him if my periods come on that day, and I'll probably be a bit crap today, you know, I'm feeling a bit ropey, you know, but I was always quite open with my coach about that. So I expect the athletes to be open with me about that as well. But ordinarily, you know, again, non-COVID times, the athlete walks into the track and you can tell pretty quick how they're feeling that day. And if they look a bit off, you might just have a little chat and warm up, how are you feeling? And if they don't say, oh, my periods come on today, you might say, oh, is it that time of the month? Or, you know, and then also the awareness of the athletes missing periods. I think there's a lot of stuff at the moment about that in the media, and it's really scary that they think that's normal. Some people think that's normal. I can honestly say, I don't know if this is too much information, but I don't care. I never missed a period. And I trained really hard for a long time. So, you know, just advocating to the athletes that actually you should be having, and if you don't, I normally give like a 3-month window. So if they've not had a period for more than 3 months, I'll make sure they go to the doctor. I don't know if that's the right thing in terms of time frame, but various things happen. So I do check in with that quite often with athletes. So when I was talking about, looking at reasons why they may not be reaching certain targets, that would be one thing on that checklist for a female that I'm looking at, and sending them for blood tests. Usually you can get a blood test from a doctor if they take that kind of thing pretty seriously. So certainly encourage them to have open conversations about that. I certainly do with my girls that I coach. Some of them overshare stuff, which is fine. It's quite funny, but certainly encourage. And as a male, as I say, I was quite happy to talk about that with Linford. It wasn't a problem, and he was very happy to have that conversation as well. So as a man, don't be scared to ask a female about that. It's not. I don't think many find it embarrassing, especially when they get a little bit older.
Yeah, definitely an education for coaches. And in Ireland, sometimes we do have a habit of brushing things under the carpet, but as we are all quickly finding out, that doesn't actually get us anywhere. So again, that openness and having that strong relationship with your athletes will lessen those conversations of being awkward, and allow you to actually approach the situation more efficiently. Laura, a few more questions. You don't need to pack your bags at all. A question. Yeah, you don't need to go. Maybe you can just stay here with us all night. Obviously the combined event is quite a obviously multitude of events that are involved. The dynamics of explosive power, aerobic endurance, and the strength endurance and so on. Do you have specific key events or key lifts, should I say, in the gym, or any key lifts or?
Not as a general for everybody. So I think that the premise with multi events is that it's a speed power event, which I think is why I get it, because I know speed and power. So for the multi events, we just get them as fast as possible, we get them as powerful as possible, and we'll do a little bit of longer running once a week so they can get around an 800. But also that aerobic capacity to be able to train for the event, I think is important. So I don't kind of send them on a long Sunday run, but what we'll do is we'll utilise warm-ups and things to get a bit of aerobic capacity going. So in terms of key lifts for that, for all the sprinters and all the speed and power events, it depends. I'm not a massive advocate of Olympic lifts. Some athletes do cleans that they do, some from the floor, some from a hand, some from the knee on blocks. Holly does jerks because that just really suits her. She's really good at a power jerk. Jodie's really good at a power jerk. But there's some athletes that we just, I wouldn't waste my time teaching them big lifts, clean, for example, because it's just not worth our time. I'll just get them to do a jump squat instead. So as long as you know why you're doing an exercise, it doesn't have to be a clean. It can be a jump squat, or it can be a trap bar jump, or it could just be a jump holding a med ball, whatever it is. I think it's just important to know why you're doing an exercise, and then you might need to be creative based on how much time you've got to teach them certain lifts.
Yeah, gym is an accessory. Ultimately, you want the performances to be shown on the track, and obviously in the field and everything like that. So, like you said, make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. Another question, maybe two more questions, and then I promise Laura will leave you in peace. Do you use any tools to monitor athlete health wellness throughout the training week or training cycle, apart from conversation and observation?
No, but it's on my to-do list, which isn't here. So there's something that someone asked me that recently, because I said that I want to have an impact on these athletes, and not just as athletes, but also as humans. And someone asked me the question, but how do you know you're having an impact? And I was like, oh, I don't. So that is something now that I'm working on. It's a wellness tracker for athletes and coaches. As I say, it's on my to-do list in here, and I've got a few templates on my laptop that I want to use. So when we get back, we can start doing it. But there's one thing that we did try when COVID started. We did try doing a wellness questionnaire, like on their phone. They just had to click on the link and complete it. I mean, God, it's like trying to get blood out of a stone. Some of them, they just wouldn't do it. And again, this is the difference between the elite guys and the developing guys. Like, if you ask some of the elite guys to do it, they would fill it out every single day religiously. But the others, they just don't do it. So I think that kind of thing is quite a sophisticated tool, and I don't think it works with everyone, but there's certainly a place for it, and it's certainly something that's on my radar in here with everything else that's going on in here. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, nearly there now, Laura, I promise. The one question is that, you know, when you get those university athletes, do you chat to their previous coach? And if so, how does that come around? And if you don't, why don't you talk to them?
So I try to. Well, what I, you know, and same thing, not just university athletes, but athletes that change coach and come over to you. You want to have a conversation about it. First, you want to make sure that it's all been amicable and everything's fine. A lot of time with the university athletes, they're going back to the coach at home. So, you know, you need to make sure that there's some kind of relationship where they can easily go back and forward. If I don't have a conversation with them, why wouldn't I?
Has that been your experience, or have had you most?
Yeah, I think I haven't spoken to everyone's coach that's joined me, if I'm being honest. Again, someone like Holly, when she joined that whole first year, I speak to her old coach very regularly, just to kind of gauge what to expect from her during different phases and things. And I don't really speak to her very much now because I've been working with her for 3 years and I get it. But someone like Jodie, again, she had a few coaches before me, so speaking to them is really helpful. But yeah, I try to do it when they first join, just to say like, oh, has so and so spoken to you? Is everything happy? What are your thoughts? What do you think? And also when athletes leave me. So recently last year I had a hurdler leave, and I had many phone calls with his new coach, and I sent him all the information, all his splits, all his videos, everything I had to the new coach, because he wanted it and he'd asked for it. So I think it's important as a coaching community that we stick together and try not to stab each other in the back, and just try and have good conversations with everyone.
The other question, oh geez, there's more, but we're going to catch that. One was, how have you managed lockdown, that dreaded lovely word of lockdown? Did your training change much? How did you adapt it? And any advice for coaches over here? We're still in, I think, day 10,000 now of lockdown. So we're still welcoming any advice that you may have.
It's really difficult. I am a planner. I don't know if you've kind of gathered that from me talking, but I'm a real planner. And having the goalposts moved what feels like every 5 minutes has been really, really hard for me. And I've had to learn to be more flexible and adaptable, and I think I am. But I think that the first lockdown, we were really on it with the athletes, and we were in contact with them on the phone every week. We were doing Zoom sessions with them. They were sending videos, and the reflections at the end of that lockdown from the athletes were that they really appreciated that. And they appreciated the accountability, they appreciated the routine that the training gave them. So what we tried to do in lockdowns 2 and 3, we're now in 3, is to keep that going, and knowing how important it was for them to have that routine in there. We've really made sure we kind of keep that up with them. But it's affected everyone. And if I think of my most happy and crazy zany athletes, they've struggled, and I've had conversations with them. They're like, Laura, I'm just really struggling with motivation, just feeling a bit down. And I'm not equipped for that. I'm not a psychologist, but interestingly, they have all turned a corner now, and we've recently done a post. Alexa, one of the multi-event athletes, has done a post on our Instagram page, our West London Instagram page, because she did struggle for a little while and she came out of it. And I asked her what was the turning point, and she said there wasn't really a turning point. She said she just kept going. She just was really disciplined and just stuck to her routine. As much as she was hating it, she just kept going, and she just kind of came out the other side of it. And I think that's really important, that there was no big sunshine moment, there was no rainbows or anything. She just had to just grind it out. And she's one of the really, really happy ones. She's great. She's great energy. So for her to admit that the struggle is quite interesting. But yeah, check out our West London Instagram, because we just posted some stuff with tips from Alexia on how she got through lockdown with motivation issues and stuff.
Thank you, Laura. This is just from a die-hard Laura Turner fan that's been following your involvement with a number of athletes for a little while. Was you are involved with Jake Whiteman. What's your involvement there? He's a 1500 meter GB athlete for any of those who might know him. And how does it compare to some of the training, or what are you doing exactly with him?
Okay, so that was a weird how that got started, because Jeff, Jake's dad and coach, phoned me, and if you know Jeff Whiteman, he's a really famous stadium announcer, so I've only ever heard Jeff as a stadium announcer, so that phone call was very, very surreal. Anyway, they asked me to get involved because they were working with I think someone from Speedworks, Ross, who then moved to Doha. And so British Athletics, I think it was Stephen McGraw at the time, had suggested that he came and asked me to do some sprint work with Jake. So they wanted some speed work. Essentially, they'd recognised that Jake wasn't particularly quick and they wanted some input from a sprints coach. So they recommended me. So I think we're about 3 years in now. I think it's about 3 years. So Jake comes to me once a week when he's in the country, which hasn't been very much this year. He comes to me once a week, and we were just working on postures, basically, so sprint postures and mechanics. And now we're kind of getting a bit more nitty gritty with speed of foot contact and that kind of change of pace work. And this year, midway through last year, actually, so probably when COVID hit last year, they brought in a second session. Now, I'd been banging on for ages that these sprint drills are really good once a week, but you're not going to get better at them if you just do them once a week. You need to be doing them more often than that. And when COVID hit a year ago, they brought in a second drill session. So they now do a sprint drills, just a drills based session, and then do a full sprint speed session once a week. And Jake felt that really helped. Just having that one extra hit of those drills once a week really helped his speed. So yeah, that's what I do. Their sprint stuff. So it was initially just teaching him what the positions were that he had to be in, and now he's much better at finding those positions. We're kind of getting down to a little bit more like the quality foot contacts and how to apply that into a race situation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Laura. Look, Laura, just on behalf of all of us here in Athletics Ireland and our Athletics Ireland community, thank you for everything that you have shared with us. Like we said, we really appreciate your honesty and your reflections just as an athlete and that now as a coach, and we all want to wish you the very best of luck. However, not too much luck because we are going to be competing against you over the next few days, and we're sending over our biggest ever team, so something that we're all looking forward to. So best of luck to all of GB, but like I said, not too much, but most importantly, best of luck in your new role, and we'll be watching and supporting you from over here.
Thank you. Thank you guys, and thanks for all the questions. That was great.
Brilliant. And Laura, like I said, the dream is that we'll have some sort of female coaching network day here in Athletics Ireland. I'm going to make it my mission to do so, and hopefully we'll be able to invite you over in a COVID-free world to be able to present and maybe a workshop or two along the way.
Lovely. I'll be there.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Laura, and thanks to everyone who got involved and for all your questions. We'll keep in touch, and we'll also circulate this video over the next few days via our YouTube channel, and your regional development officers as well will also be able to circulate the video to yourselves. So thanks a million again, guys, and have a lovely evening.